Hello and welcome to episode 32
32.
of the Spotlight Games podcast. My name is Patrick. I am joined, as always, by my sweet, sweet boy, straight from the dumpster, Cayman. Cayman, how's it smelling in there?
You know, it smells ripe.
Ooh,
Not a little like trash.
sure.
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 It is a dumpster.
I mean, I feel like I hope to never have to live in a dumpster, but if I did, I would be honored for you to be my dumpster roommate.
Thanks,
You know?
buddy. Oh, I want you to be my dumpster roommate.
Stop
I mean, I
it.
feel like at this point in our lives, we are dumpster roommates.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah,
That's for certain.
that is
Cayman,
true.
we got a lot to go through.
We do.
Got all sorts of news, all sorts of shit to talk about. So why don't we jump right in, because we are here at the Spotlight Games podcast, where each and every week we're going to talk about the latest and the greatest in the world of video games. You can get it by subscribing to our YouTube channel or by subscribing in your favorite podcast app. And hey, while you're there, why don't you rate us? Why don't you review us in that podcast app of your choice? Don't forget, you can be on the show by emailing your thoughts and your questions to mail@spotlightgames.net, or you can DM us on Twitter at SpotGamesPod or on Instagram at Spotlight Games Podcast. Cayman, we had an interesting week this week.
We did.
We had a little, how do you say, crossover episode with
100%.
Save Trash Cinema. We,
100%.
as written here on the doc, we sucked some zombie cock with Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. Cayman, tell our audience about said zombie suck.
Yeah, so we launched our first ever crossover episode between Save Trash Cinema and Spotlight Games. As far as I know from my conversations with Patrick, we're going to be doing this more often, where instead of doing just a normal trash cinema film, we're going to be covering specifically shitty video game adaptations. And let me tell you, earlier I was looking up a whole list of them, and there's like 1,000. So many that I didn't even realize most of them existed. Did you know there's a live action Tekken movie?
I didn't, and I refused to watch it.
Well, good news, I own a copy.
God damn it.
So if you're interested in hearing us talk about something that's not Tekken related and more zombie related with Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, guess what? We have an awesome episode for you. It's a mini-sode crossover, so short form content, so you don't have to put too much time and energy into it. But it's great. I think it's a fantastic episode, something new and fresh that we're doing. But I think it's time. You know, we normally do this. We'll be recording this week the next episode of Safe Trash Cinema that will be released next week. And that movie is the 1990s Doll Man. And let me tell you, it's interesting, and it's just full of weird. So
yeah, the premise, this man comes to Earth from a different planet, and when he gets here, it turns out he's only 13 inches tall. And that's really all I can remember from the movie, and I watched it.
Great news is that he still has his gun, which makes people explode. And he does a lot of that. So, yeah, it's going to be a really fun episode. We have Jeremiah Hobbs, who's going to be on the episode with us. You might remember him from when we did April Fool's Day. So if you enjoyed that episode, believe me, you're going to enjoy this one as well. And it'll be released next Tuesday. So when you're listening to this, just get in preparation, because if you haven't listened to Welcome to Raccoon City, you should have already. But if you haven't, listen to that and then get prepped. Because guess what? You can watch Dollman on Tubi. So watch it before we review it. And you, if you have thoughts on it, just shoot us a message and let us know. We'd love to talk about it.
For our audience here, definitely, if you're interested in watching Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, if you've played the games, check it out. Listen to the episode. If you've not played the games, listen to the episode and decide for yourself if you should watch it. That's all I'll say. But why don't we jump right into the show, Cayman? We got a lot to talk about. Trek To Yomi has come out, so we're going to talk about that. We got some reviews. I've been dabbling in this said Trek To Yomi, so I'll talk about my experience in just a few short minutes. Gotham Knights got a little update today, so we're going to talk about that. EA broke up with FIFA, sent him a text, said we're done, so we're going to talk about that. And a lot more. So let's jump right in with what we've been playing. Cayman, hit me. What you got? What you been playing since we
All
recorded?
right. All right, guys. Well, good news. I wasn't able to do it last week, but I was able to do it this week. I popped my platinum number 45 with Retromania Wrestling. And yeah, look, my thoughts from last episode have not changed. It's a fun game. If you like vintage wrestling games, you'll probably enjoy it. If you don't, you're probably not going to enjoy it. It's a bit antiquated, but for the traditionalist, it's a pretty solid game. A little light on content. Platinum though, easy, very easy platinum, a fun platinum, but easy. And like I said, you probably won't want to get the platinum if you don't enjoy the game enough to just put the energy towards doing some of these things repetitively. But it took me probably about 5 to 6 hours total to get the platinum. So, like I said, short, easy. And if you're looking to add an additional one to your docket, it's a good one there. I've also been playing more Switch Sports, which I had my in-laws in town last week, and when they first got in town, we put it on. It was just my in-laws themselves, and we played bowling for a little bit. We played a little tennis, and honestly, it kind of landed like a wet fart. No one was into it. The complaint was is that it didn't really feel much like Wii Sports, and it was way too sensitive in some areas and not sensitive enough in other areas, and I totally understand that. The thing happened was is the following day, my brother-in-law or soon-to-be brother-in-law, his girlfriend, and one of their friends came over. We had a few drinks and we popped it on, and honestly, it was a smash hit. People were so into it, like just hardcore into it. The trash talk, the competitive nature came out, and it was like the whole opinion and attitude in the air had completely done a 180. And it's kind of led me back to the same thing where I think that it's still going to hit it, but it just might. I don't think it's going to hit the same way as it did before. With more time and energy put into it, you could probably master some of the mechanics. Like, I don't think anyone pulled up Wii Sports and was immediately a master at it. But after years of playing it, like, you're bowling a 275 every single time you get up to play. Um, I think if enough people latch onto it and gravitate to it, I think that might still happen. The nostalgia factor there definitely pushes people to want to play it. And, enough people, I think it could be a standout hit. I still think it's going to sell really well. But, that's kind of my opinion. And then the last game I've been
Hold
playing
on.
this week. Yes.
Pause. Because I've also
Sure.
been playing Nintendo Switch Sports. I played
Okay, well,
more.
jump in.
I'm gonna jump in, Cayman.
Just jump in.
You know what? If you would have me, I would like to jump in here.
Right. Get
Um,
on the water's warm.
you know what? I'm
Jump in.
walking by. The warm water is just calling my name. He's going, Patrick,
Mhm.
jump in.
Jump
Um,
in.
I saw Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness this weekend, and afterward,
Ooh.
a buddy of mine that I went to see the movie with, Austin, came over, and we had a couple other people come over eventually, and we all played for a little bit. We didn't like play all night by any means, but we did. We bowled, we tennised, we volleyballed, Cayman,
Okay.
and I'm turning around a little bit on what I said last week. Last week I was definitely a lot more down on it, but I did, I was like, I only played solo last week. So
Sure.
now that I've played with a group of people, I echo that I don't think this is going to be I don't think it's going to be the smash hit that Wii Sports was, but I do think it's going to catch on. I do think that this will be like a go-to party game because we had a lot of fun.
Mhm.
I mean, crushed the competition in tennis. I got crushed in bowling,
Sure.
but it happens. But yeah, no, I definitely, that party aspect is what I was missing that first time I played.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll be playing it solo ever again, but I will definitely be breaking it out for the party vibe.
Yeah. No, I don't. I agree with that. But to go back to the kiddie pool where I'm currently residing, because I know you're swimming in the deep end like a big boy. The last game I've been playing this week has been the Stanley Parable. Now I have only seen videos and seen people speed run and play it, and do other things. But I've never had hands-on action with it, so I was extremely excited to jump in, pretty much cold
Yeah.
into it. And honestly, I really enjoy this game. The Stanley Parable is a ton of fun. The great thing about the Stanley Parable, outside of the fact that it's just like it's super meta, is that it's just absolutely hilarious. And the new additional content added into the game, you just get more endings and more things you can kind of do. And those, like, the little things you can do in the game are just really fucking funny. And so I'm sitting here laughing. And the truth is like majority of the endings in this game are really depressing. Like
True.
horribly depressing endings that
Yeah.
make you question everything you're doing with your life. The new content leans more into like the meta of the gaming itself. Instead of it being like more you talking about how we're wasting our lives in a cubicle, it's more like game developers are greedy bastards who are trying to suck all of the money and life out of you. So, kind of playing through it, I've really enjoyed it. I've been popping some trophies as I go. And honestly, the platinum for this game is going to be incredibly easy to get. There's one caveat. There is a trophy that requires you to play the entirety of a Tuesday. 24 hours of a Tuesday.
Can it be different Tuesdays or does it have to be the same Tuesday?
It is cumulative, so it can
Okay.
be different Tuesdays. But the thing is, right, is that you're obviously just not going to play it for that amount of like 24 straight hours on a
Right.
Tuesday. So they kind of are like the way to get the trophy, if you want to do it the easy way, is just like you just have to repeatedly change your clock to be for it to be Tuesday and then just let your console run.
That's so stupid though.
And I'm like, okay. Like there's a trophy that's like quit the game and then play it again in 10 years. And like it's hilarious,
Sure.
but it's very easy to accomplish. You just change your console settings and you change it for 10 years. And then it pops a trophy. And it makes fun of you for doing that.
Yeah.
Which is even funnier to me is the game like is like, yeah, you did this to get this one trophy, you piece of shit. I love that.
Yeah.
But this Tuesday one, it's like you can't not do it this way. Like there's no workarounds. You have to do it this way. And to me, I'm like, look, as much as I want to, like, I just don't want to let my PS5 sit there and run for 24 hours on a Tuesday. That like just kind of spoils it for me. But
is there a way, like, if you were to put it at like midnight on Tuesday and then change it to be like 12 hours later on that Tuesday, or is it like it has to be raw time?
it has to be raw time.
That's stupid. I mean, knowing that now, whenever I do pick it up, I'll probably play the entire game and always just make my console Tuesday. So if I spend 10 hours doing it, then I have 10 hours at least. But like it's funny, but that one is too much. That's a step too far, I would say.
And that's what I felt like. There's some really funny trophies in the game. And it honestly, it kind of pushes you to do weird shit in the game so you can pop some of these very weird trophies because there's some incredibly weird trophies.
Yeah.
But honestly, when you get into it, like this one particular trophy, and this is kind of when we talk about sometimes where we're like, hey, there are trophies in games while you're doing a platinum run, they can legitimately ruin a game for you.
100%.
And so in this particular situation, I'm like, honestly, I might just not even attempt to do this because I feel like by the time I'm actually am able to figure out a way to pull this off, I will have soured on the Stanley Parable. And I don't want that to be the case because honestly, I think that this game is just it needs to be played by everyone.
Yeah.
Like it is so fucking weird and so meta and so funny. Like it needs to be played.
That's a shame.
That trophy, maybe not.
It reminds me of I remember your qualms with Dead Rising. That one trophy where it's like you had to kill like 95,000 zombies. And I remember you put in the work. I don't know that you ever got it. Do you remember?
I didn't.
Yeah. I remember you would just like for hours just be doing this like one section where you could just like slaughter a bunch of them and
then and there's games that like make you grind like that for shit. I'm like, I understand why you include it because you want to like weed out the people for the platinum. Like you want it to be like, well, only 1% of the players that have ever played this game have like 100% completed it or got the platinum at least. And like, I get that, but like this one is like,
that's silly.
You're purposely making a trophy to be aggravating just to be aggravating. And I understand the meta here and the joke here, but I don't know. It just kind of lands a little flat for me.
Yeah, that
on an otherwise absolutely stellar experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's even worse.
I am glad though that you really enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, that's great. Love that. I
Now, you have been playing a game that I want to talk to you about. I want to hear a lot about this.
Yeah, I've been playing Trek To Yomi.
Yes.
This is I'm gonna pull up some B-roll for our sweet video watchers. Oh wait, let me mute it. There you go. This is maybe the prettiest game I've ever played in my life. I'm playing it on Xbox. It's on Xbox Game Pass, and I am playing on my new OLED TV. If you're watching, you'll
Oh
see
shit.
that this game is in. It looks like you're playing a Kurosawa film.
Yeah.
And like
100%.
when Ghost of Tsushima came out, they had this like setting where you could make the game black and white, and like it was cool, but I felt like it was a bit more of like a just like a fun thing to do. This
Yeah.
game is designed from the ground up to have this style. And you'll notice it while you're watching the video, in between combat, it almost feels like a Resident Evil game in that a lot of the time, this exact moment that we're seeing is not like this. A lot of the time it's a fixed camera in a space, and you're walking through, and so you'll be going through these like various hallways of this map, and it really feels like you're almost like in a Resident Evil, like an old school Resident Evil game. And it is, and like right here, this is a great example. The cinematography of this game, like every shot is like a movie. And so often, like I've been taking screenshots galore on my Xbox, because so often like you'll be fighting enemies, and the way that they have the shot framed is just so cool. Like there's this one I did a little bit earlier today on my lunch break where you're fighting these enemies on a bridge, but you're like 15 20 feet 20 yards away, and like what's in focus of the shot is this boat that's just like kind of like sitting on the water.
That's
And like
incredible.
it's just like it is a delight to watch. The issue, unfortunately, is the gameplay.
Mm.
I'm enjoying it. So after I kind of go through my spiel here, we're going to go through some reviews from around the web. It's
Sure.
getting a bit of a mixed result right now.
Yeah.
The reviews are anywhere from like this game is not good to this game is just a disappointment, but it's still good. I'm more in that camp. I'm more in like the disappointment, but it's still good. Like I'm only probably 2 hours in. I'm on chapter like 3 of 6 or 2 of 6. So I still have a fair amount of game to play. But right now I'll be shocked if it like hits the 8 or 9 range for me on a scale of 10. Like I think this is going to be like a 6 or a 7 when I'm done with it.
That's a letdown.
Which is a letdown. Like I will say it, like if you have an Xbox, no brainer. It's on Game Pass. If you're a subscriber, I highly recommend you play this game, because like I said, it's so gorgeous. The gameplay, like it's not that it's bad. Like I actually, the first like hour I was playing, I really enjoyed the combat. What I'm realizing though is that once you have played 15 minutes of this game, I think you've gotten everything it's going to give you from a gameplay perspective, from a experience perspective, outside of the cinematic and like the visual. That's the only thing I think that's going to change from this point, which is disappointing. Like I think if this aesthetic could have mixed with gameplay that was a home run, I mean, this could be like a game of the year contender, I think.
Sure.
But yeah, it's not quite there. I do think it's worth playing. Like if you have a PlayStation, especially if you're watching the video, like if this looks interesting to you, it's $20, so it's not going to break the bank per se. If this game were any more than $20, I would say that would change the way I feel about it. But there is some cool gameplay aspects here. Like there's this thing that around this area of where the video is at, this part of the level, there's a few times throughout where there might be the path might fork. And depending on which one you pick, you'll either have to fight the enemies, or if you pick one, like you'll be able to like spring a trap that kills them all. So like sometimes there's like fun little puzzly aspects like that. But so far I've been surprised that there's like no real like puzzle aspect. There's no like platforming. The platforming doesn't like that makes sense that there wouldn't be platforming, just like the way that the game controls. But it's really just like move from point A to point B, fight one of like 4 different enemy types, and then do that again. Like that's kind of it.
Yeah.
Which is I'm very surprised by. Like I really expected this to be more than that, but I guess they're really leaning on the visuals, which like they fucking nailed it. Like the visuals are incredible, and that's what's keeping me around. But I am a little disappointed to report that it is a little bit of a disappointment for me.
Yeah, that's a bummer. Well, why don't we jump in and kind of see what some other people are saying as well. So the first review we got, it comes from Travis Northrup from IGN. He gets it a 7 out of 10. He says, Trek To Yomi is a brief but captivating journey that's like playing through a monochromatic Japanese movie, and that excellent presentation is enough to carry it even though it falls short in most other respects. Combat is one note and easily mastered, and exploration and puzzles don't have much to offer aside from a fleeting distraction. Thankfully, its relatively brief story was one that still drew me in enough to absolutely feel worth my time.
I think that so far nails it for me. Like I think that I align with Travis. And the only thing that I kind of disagree with is so far the story is not bringing me in as much. It's kind of like a textbook like revenge tale. And not that there's anything wrong with that. I just feel like it's kind of samey, especially like when you look at something like Ghost of Tsushima or like it's a story that I've played, read, watched. Like it's a pretty common story. So, but I mean, there's still a lot of story left for me. So,
Sure.
um,
Now
go ahead with
let's
GameSpots. Yeah.
Yeah, so this one, I'm very curious your opinion on this one. Now, this comes from Richard Wakeling at GameSpot. He gives it a 5 out of 10. He says it's a simple story that moves along at a fairly brisk pace, often squeezing in less than a minute of dialogue before you're on to the next fight. The emotional beats don't quite pay off since you don't spend enough time with any of the characters to become invested, but it never tries to stretch itself too thin. It is a refined tale that complements the action without ever being truly compelling. At times, it's disappointing that it doesn't do more, only briefly touching on Shinto mythology, for example, but it serves its purpose generating momentum with its revenge-fueled romp. The faults of its gameplay are especially disappointing given that Trek to Yomi is such a gorgeous and spellbinding game to look at. Its visuals are evocative of classic samurai cinema in a way few other games have managed, successfully capturing the look and feel of Kurosawa's masterpieces with a plume. It's easy to recommend if you have an Xbox Game Pass subscription, if only to marvel at each meticulously constructed frame. If only the game beneath it wasn't such an unfortunate letdown.
I
Yikes.
think it's funny like that. It actually doesn't really read as a 5 out of 10 to me. That little snippet, like it definitely, it is more damning than
Sure.
Travis's review. But he still like has some stuff to like to recommend in this part of the review. But I think like so far that first line, it's a simple story that moves along at a fairly brisk pace, often squeezing in less than a minute of dialogue before you're on to the next fight. And that is kind of like that is spot on. Like there's every now and then there's like a short cutscene, but it's very much like it almost feels like it's going for more of a vibe than a story in a way. Like a lot of the time so far in my time, like I'm in this village that's being like raided by these bandits, and as I'm going through, there will be like you can mainline it or like you can hop into these different houses and like help various people, or like maybe there'll be a bandit in there like trying to attack these people and you can save them, and there will be like a little bit of dialogue. But I feel like it doesn't ever like move the story forward. It's more just like kind of reinforcing that vibe of like, all right, you're this samurai who is like trying to defend your village, and that's like it. Like I'm not really getting much of like there isn't really an antagonist, there isn't really like I don't know. Yeah, I agree with that for sure. So I hope by the next week I'll probably have it beaten. So I'll have some more kind of fleshed out thoughts. But definitely, I think I'm probably somewhere like right in the middle of them both. But I definitely align more with the IGN 7 out of 10 than GameSpot's 5.
Okay. Right on. Right
Yeah,
on. I
yeah,
mean, for me, $20 price range with the reviews with the way they are. I mean, this might be a game I pick up. I mean, honestly, it's kind of slim pickings for the next few months outside of like Mario Strikers.
yeah.
Um, it might be one I pick up just to give it a shot, but Yeah, I don't know. I'm a bit disappointed from your review and from everyone else's because this definitely was a game that I was kind of looking forward to.
Yeah, I will say, like, last thing, and then let's move on. I listened to a couple reviews before playing, and I read a few, and I kind of had that experience that you're going through right now with those. Like, it's sounding like, ah, man, it kind of missed the mark. And I think those lower expectations are actually making me enjoy it a little more. I think if I had
Okay.
just played it day one without reading anything with those expectations that I had, I probably would have been like, man, they really missed the mark. But I kind of had those lowered
Sure.
expectations that it's good, but it's not going to blow your face off like those trailers kind of made me think they would. So I just think that's worth mentioning. Like, adjusted expectations might save this game for a lot of people.
Right on. Right on.
We got a big one, Cayman.
Yeah, this is insane.
EA and FIFA are ending their partnership. This is pulling directly from EA. This is a press release that they had. I thought I pulled over the name of who wrote it, but I didn't. It's some like SVP of fucking whatever.
Sure.
Um, a new era begins in July 2023 after EA Sports delivers most expansive FIFA ever this year. He writes to football fans everywhere. After nearly 30 years of creating genre defining interactive football experiences, we will soon begin an exciting new era. Next year, EA Sports FC will become the future of football from EA Sports. Alongside our 300 plus licensed partners across the sports, we're ready to take global football experiences to new heights on behalf of all football fans around the world. Everything you love about our games will be part of EA Sports FC. The same great experiences, modes, leagues, tournaments, clubs, and athletes will be there. Ultimate Team, Career Mode, Pro Clubs, and Volta Football will all be there. Our unique licensing portfolio of more than 19,000 players, 700 plus teams, 100 plus stadiums, and 30 leagues that we've continued to invest in for decades will still be there. Uniquely in EA Sport FC. That includes exclusive partnerships with Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga, Serie A, the MLS, and more to come. This new independent platform, underlining and highlighting independent platform. We'll come back to that. This
Oh boy.
new independent platform will bring fresh opportunity to innovate, create, and evolve. This is much more than just a change of symbol. As EA Sports, we're committed to ensuring EA Sports FC is a symbol of change. We're dedicated to meaningfully and reinvesting in the sport, and we're excited to work with a large and increasing number of partners to expand to new authentic experiences that bring joy, inclusivity, and immersion to a global community of fans. Blah, blah, blah. EA Sports FC will allow us to realize this future and much more, but not before we deliver our most expansive. So he basically goes on to say that FIFA 23 is still coming this year. We're incredibly excited to build the future of a global football with all of you, and we will be happy to share more info on EA Sports FC in summer of 2023. The future of the sport is very big and bright, and football fandom is reaching across every corner of the world. Global football has been part of EA Sports for nearly 30 years, and today we're ensuring that it will be for decades to come. So I didn't bring it in, but FIFA has made a statement as well, and it's like it reads like totally unhinged. Essentially, like, it seems like what's happening, there's a non exclusive agreement now. So like FIFA will be a licensed partner of EA, but it won't be a what's the word I just used? Exclusive. Won't be an exclusive partner. So what I think this might mean is that like we're gonna get other like FIFA licensed games as well. But that part right in the middle, this new independent platform will bring fresh opportunity to innovate, create, and evolve. Gives me a big old case of the heebie-jeebies. That I think that what they're saying is we're going to make FIFA a games as a service platform now instead of an annualized, which maybe that's a good thing. But what do you think, Cayman?
So I think, okay, so I guess for me, I kind of want EA to lose the rights to everything.
Yeah.
Hear me out. The reason
I'm
being,
listening.
and for me, like, look, soccer's not, or is it football? Football is life. It's just not a sport that I grew up playing. It's not a sport that resonates with me like it does with literally every other country in the world. So if I were to take something like Madden, for
Yeah.
instance, right? Or so let's say Madden because EA does Madden. Like I would be 100% content with Madden being removed from EA. The reason being is because I feel like when you monopolize a property such as FIFA or Madden or even over 2K with the NBA, when you monopolize a property like that, essentially you don't have to do much
Correct.
every single year. You don't have to innovate. You don't have to do really anything. You can literally just put the same game out every single year. And a lot of people, that's their complaints with sports games, especially, is they're like, hey, this is just the same shit. It might look slightly better than last year, but there's really nothing new here. And when you have something like Madden, especially where it's like, oh, NFL Street, not going to get it anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, NFL Blitz, not going to get it anymore. Now, NFL Blitz is a little bit different because of the whole CTE issue.
Sure.
But when you start to monopolize and you do that, you cannibalize these properties to a point where paying $60, $70 every single year for essentially the exact same game is very anti-consumer.
Sure.
And it just brings in a fuck ton of money for a company that it's at this point doesn't deserve it anymore. So I hope that with FIFA doing this is that other game developers will have access and rights to some of these properties and that they can put their own fresh spin and we can start to actually get better games from it.
Yeah.
And who knows, the EA Sports FC or whatever the fuck they're calling it, it might still be the best property that there is. But it will also force EA to try to make better versions of these games. That is the hope. Now, the independent platform thing is a terrifying word to use because, like you said, I 100% believe that this is going to be EA going and being like, pulling up some shit where they're like, oh, yeah, well, UFC, or whatever the fucking Manchester United club is. I don't know soccer, man. Fuck you. They're going to be like, oh, Manchester United is now an NFT where only one person will ever be able to play them because they gave us $52 million to use it. And so sucks to suck, bro.
Yeah.
Like that is kind of where my head's at right now.
Yeah.
And that's a little terrifying.
I agree. It's really interesting to me that, so obviously I am a much bigger football boy than you are.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And I used to play every FIFA when it came out, and I would play it for dozens of hours each year. I haven't really played a FIFA game in earnest in probably like 4 or 5 years because I just got tired of it. Like it's the same every year. Like the only thing that really would be added was updated rosters, but like I don't follow the sport enough anymore to really care about the updated rosters as much because like I don't even fucking know where. Well, I do know where Ronaldo plays now, but like I don't follow it like I used to, is what I'm saying. And so in a way, this is kind of exciting for me because it's change. Like I feel like the franchise needs change. But what worries me is this like potential games as a service model, because you look at their only competitor in the space right now, which is, it used to be called Pro Evolution Soccer. It's a Konami game. They just released like their version of this called eFootball, which is a free to play game that there's like some monetization in it in some way, but I honestly haven't looked into it enough to know what that monetization is. But the consensus online is this game is fucking broken. Like it's not good. So I don't think EA would put out a product that's just broken, but I do worry. Like you look at other EA titles like Apex, where the way it's a free to play game and you buy in like via seasons. I don't know what seasons cost, but I assume they're probably like, I know with Fortnite, they're like 30 or $40 a season or something like that.
I want to say when I was playing Apex, it was like $20 a season.
So like, and do you happen to remember how often seasons happen with Apex?
Every 3 to 4 months.
Okay. So like if it's $20 a month every 3 to 4 months, that, depending on if it's 3 or 4 months, that ends up averaging out to like either $60 or $80 a year, which is about what you're paying a year anyway for FIFA.
I think my issue with that kind of setup though is that more often than not, what they would do is they'd be like, "Oh, we have a new season coming out, so you can get your battle pass, right?" And so you're gonna pay for a battle pass where you have like 60 days, 90 days to be able to complete everything in the game. And then you'll unlock rewards and shit, yada yada. But a lot of it too is like they're not building in new characters, not really building
Yeah.
anything new into it. You're more so just paying for skins. And ultimately, like I get where that works, but with something like FIFA, I don't see how you can monetize that without like putting a paywall behind exclusive access to like Manchester United
Yeah. The
or
only thing that I can think of
you know,
that they could do from like a content perspective is like throughout the year there are various or throughout the years there are various like tournaments. So like this fall, because it's in Qatar, so it's in the fall instead of the summer, is the World Cup. So like maybe one season is a World Cup season, and then another season is like the Champions League season, which is like the World Cup but for clubs instead of nations. So like there's like that kind of thing, but like that doesn't happen enough for it to be like a revolving schedule of like.
yeah.
And so then I'm like, well, are you going to do like game modes like this? Like Volta is like the new version of like FIFA Street, which is not as fun as I think it should be. But then it's like, if you're going to put entire game modes behind a paywall, then it's like, I don't know. I'm really interested to see what this looks like, because right now, obviously, this is all speculation, but I I just think it's really fascinating that they finally are like, fuck you. We're gonna, because the name FIFA, like the cachet that FIFA has is, I mean, it's FIFA means video game soccer. Like FIFA is also like an actual organization. So like a lot of people think of FIFA as the governing body of soccer, but I think a lot of people, especially in the United States, FIFA means EA Sports Soccer.
Yeah.
So
No,
that, I
yeah.
mean, that like branding change, I think is pretty huge, and I think they must have a really strong idea of their business model for them to make that change. And I bet also part of it is because FIFA as a governing body is like one of the most corrupt sports organizations in the world, and like there's a lot of really problematic shit with FIFA. So it might be them just wanting to get away from that. Maybe, I don't know.
Potentially.
It's yeah. I'm excited to hear more about this because I think this is really fascinating, uh, and it could bode well or it could just run the franchise more into the ground. Who's to say, Cayman? Who's to say?
Yeah, we are.
Wow, I think we are the ones
We
to
are.
say.
We are indeed.
That's correct. Cayman, I hope that something that won't be run into the ground is Gotham Knights. We got today an
We did.
extended look at the game coming out this October, being made by WB Montreal, which, if you're not familiar, WB Montreal is, whoops, let me turn that volume off. Come on, Patty. Gotham Knights
Aw.
is being made by WB Montreal. They're the ones who, with the Arkham franchise, they did the spin-off game Arkham Origins in between Arkham Asylum or Arkham City and Arkham Knight, I believe. So different studio, and we've seen a little bit of this game, and like it was delayed at one point into October. But this is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, this is our first like really big deep dive look at the game. It's like a 14-minute video.
Yeah, it's a
What do you think?
meaty look.
Yeah, what did you think?
You know, so it definitely feels like this is I suppose a successor to Arkham
I
of the
think
Arkham
so.
series.
Mm-hmm.
Um it they showed off like some video of like Nightwing and Red Hood kind of traversing the city. And it definitely gave off a lot of Spider-Man vibes.
Mm-hmm.
The combat itself looks more fluid and less clunky than the Batman games, like the Arkham games. And that
I
was
agree.
honestly my biggest issue and biggest complaint with the Arkham games was that it just felt clunky. It felt stiff. Batman, especially, just, he's this, martial arts master that's fluent in all of these different fighting styles. And ultimately, the best way to honestly play the game, at least in my opinion, when I played it, was to just try to stealth through as much as you could because the combat just felt so slow and sluggish.
Yeah.
This doesn't look that way. It looks very much more like Spider-Man, more fluid, more just more. I don't know how to even phrase it, but like it's more kinetic, where things feel like
Mm-hmm.
they're moving in a way they should be moving. And I think we've been spoiled with Insomniac making Spider-Man games because let's be honest, those games like the combat is incredibly addictive, feels very good.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna steal any sort of mechanics from a game, that would be the one I would take, especially in this style of game. So it gives me a lot of hope that, you know, right now, like this looks good. This looks like a fun game. It did show off a little bit of the co-op and the co-op portion. I'm curious how that's gonna play
I agree.
because I could see this being like this could be a really fun game where you're running around with your friends and everything's awesome, or this could be literally another case of Marvel's The Avengers.
Yeah, it's interesting. So they confirmed today
Hmm.
that when you're playing co-op, it's only ever going to be two-player co-op, even though like they kind of market the game as being like the four characters. It's Nightwing, Red Hood, Robin, and Batgirl.
Interesting.
But they confirmed like what they're showing, like you'll only ever play with two people at a time, which I think could actually is probably like going to benefit it because like some like
Yeah.
with the Avengers, I always felt like the couple times that I played with three other humans, it was always just like so hectic, and it's like it was really hard to like be following what was even happening. Um, and right now we have some B-roll up. This like that is such a Spider-Man thing. Like with this
Yeah.
chase, you knock him out of the car, and then now you're fighting all of them. But yeah, I'm really interested to see like what that feels like. Is it a like you go into a lobby and connect with someone? Is it more like Outriders where like you're playing with a friend and like you're in that person's world and it's not really like
Hmm.
it's kind of affecting your own world? I don't know. Yeah, I want to hear more what that looks like.
Yeah.
I'll likely just play solo. But I do like this. I was a little worried before this came out, and this has definitely kind of quelled my fear a little bit. Like this game looks fun. Like it, to your point, looks really nice and fluid. My only complaint so far, and it's a stupid one. I just don't care about these characters. Like
Yeah.
I like looking at right now, like the way Red Hood like flies around the city like Batman did is in the video, I forget how they worded it, but he was like he uses energy from his soul to, and he's basically like hopping on like
It's called like a soul leap or some shit.
he's like hopping on this like invisible like teal energy. And with Nightwing, it's almost like a Horizon or a Breath of the Wild thing where like he has this uh thing he's holding on to. It's almost like a glider, but it seems like you can actually like accelerate with it too. So it's not you're not just falling like you are in those other games. But like
Yeah.
just watching Nightwing fight and watching Red Hood, I mean, I don't really think they look cool, and like I'm not excited to be them. So I'm hoping that Robin or Batgirl will make me more excited because that was my biggest critique and takeaway of this is like I just don't know that I want to be these people,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I will say they're showing off like new costumes and stuff, which I think is kind of cool. It can vary up if you are playing with other people, but ultimately, it still comes back down to like this worry that I have with the way that the Avengers game went, where if you get costumes, like, are they the way they're kind of explaining their costumes, like, oh no, each costume has its own play style, so you'll fit what fits you best. And I'm like, okay, that's cool, but like, I don't know. Look, I think we got burned really hard with that, and it's it just one. I think you're correct that like the characters. I mean, sure, it'd be cool to play as Red Hood or Robin or Batgirl, but also like rather play as Batman,
Right,
and like
right,
I
right.
don't know if I care as much about Dick Grayson than I do about Batman,
Yeah.
about Bruce Wayne. And so, they're very much going to have to try to sell me on the story, I think is a big thing. But then the other question is like, are you going to have characters where it's like, oh, hey, look, the two most fun characters to play as in the entire game are going to be Batgirl and Robin. And then anytime you want to try to play anything else, you have people who are like, no, I'm only good as Robin. Like,
Sure.
I'm really bad at every other character. And like, if you have that situation, then essentially you've spoiled the game, because then that person will only be able to play with people who can play with someone else.
Sure.
And then, I think that's a very difficult balancing act. I think the game looks like they're on to something, and there's a potential chance that this could be something magical here. But ultimately, I think I need to wait for more previews, more hands-on. And I do still think this is a game that I will most likely be waiting for like an extensive set of reviews to come out before I drop
Sure.
my money on it.
One other thing too that I found was interesting about this, outside of our next like part B story, is they also clarified today that this will not be a games as a service. That this will be
That's good
just
news.
it'll be a co-op optional, story driven. Like, I don't believe there's end game content like games as a service. Like, this is very much, they have a story about the Court of Owls that they're telling us via these 4 protagonists, which that was the other piece today that gave me a lot of relief. Like, and like I saw some people online, they're like, I don't understand why so many people were thinking that this was going to be games as a service, because they never said it was going to be. But like, when you look at like, when you compare it to other games in our industry, like, it looks like it was going to be a games as a service. And even like just looking at their gameplay demo, like, it, when you see it playing with another person, like, that just, it seems like it would have been a games as a service.
Yeah.
So that I will say, I did want to add that in, because I think that is like another checkbox in the, okay, I'm not as worried as I thought I was going to be. And I agree though with you. Like, I want to see a little bit more. I want to see those reviews. I want to see like hands-on from the press to see whether or not this is a day one buy for me. Another thing though with this came in that I think is very much worth mentioning is that they have officially canceled the last gen versions. They announced today that this is just PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. That they're not doing this anymore for PS4 and Xbox One, which I think is for the best. I am pulling this from, I believe this is from Michael McWhorter at Polygon. Yes, I am. Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment's new Batman Arkham spinoff, Gotham Knights, is coming to PlayStation 5, Windows PC, and Xbox Series X this October, and only those platforms. The game is no longer slated to release on last-gen consoles, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, Warner Bros. Announced today. In a news release announcing a new gameplay trailer for Gotham Knights, WBIE said, quote, to provide players with the best possible gameplay experience, the game will release on PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC, and will not be available for PS4 and Xbox One. When WBIE and developer WB Montreal announced Gotham Knights back in August 2020, it was a cross-generation game, but it appears the ongoing delayed development of the cooperative action adventure has shifted it to current generation platforms only, and it is slated to come out on October 25th. Thoughts, Kingman?
Yeah, no, I think this honestly is the biggest news from this. Look, I mean, I'm gonna be gentle with this.
Please be
because I
gentle.
feel like I need to be. This sucks for the people who still haven't been able to get their hands on the next gen consoles, the PlayStation 5, the Series X. Consoles are in short supply. They're getting better. They're becoming more available. People are being able to find them more readily and easily than we were the last couple of years. However, there still is a constraint on the supply chain. When you couple that in with just the way that the economy is currently working, with the increase in prices of everything, this might not be, getting a new console might not be the top on people's priority list. And that's 100% okay. So it sucks for those people, because ultimately it's a bummer if you're not able to play the next big game or a game that you're really looking forward to, which this for a lot of people will be a game like that.
Yeah.
And that sucks. And I feel for those people. And I feel like, Patrick and I are part of the lucky group who have access to those consoles. We were lucky enough to be able to get them. But I understand where people would be upset that they weren't. With that being said, this is a necessary step for this generation of consoles going forward. The harsh reality and truth is the more games that are being designed for both platforms means that ultimately the product itself is not going to be capitalizing on the hardware that currently exists.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we are right now, where we're starting to see the ramifications. You can look at something like Horizon Zero Dawn, right? And you put both games side by side, and I think Guerrilla did an incredible job of being able to like maximize what they could get from the same build. But other games like this, I don't know if a game with this level of graphical detail, the mechanics, all of the ins and outs that are going into a game like this, if you're designing it with next gen consoles in mind, like how do you make that work on previous gen?
Yeah.
I mean, think Cyberpunk, for instance. Cyberpunk should have never launched on previous gen consoles. It just should not have happened.
Yeah.
The whole focus during building that game out should have been on next gen and next gen only. And they were trying to hamstring in a previous gen console to make additional money. And in the process, honestly, they probably lost money because of it. I think this is a smart move. And, if you're someone who doesn't have one of the next newest gen consoles, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but a lot of the games that you're excited to play that are both slated for both that look way too big and way too next gen for the console you're on, guess what? They're not coming.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is the first step.
I agree. I will say though, like every day we're closer to being able to just walk into a Target and buy a PS5.
Yeah.
It is. I've been seeing for the Xbox fans, Xbox Series S, pretty easy to get a hold of, and even Xbox Series X, they're starting to be able to produce them a lot more. PS5s are still really hard to find. But yeah, I feel like something like this, it makes me like, my initial thought is, okay, if you just announced that you've canceled this version of the game, how long ago was that decision made? And how much money did you have to waste? And time did you have to waste building the last gen version? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's a shame. Like, I agree with everything you just said, but I don't want to say it again because that'd be boring for our listeners. But the other thing is, I mean, they've been working on this game for probably 4 to 5 years, and I would be willing to bet a lot of that time, if not half of that time, was spent building it for both consoles. But if they only ever had to focus on these newer consoles, then this game might have been out a year and a half ago. You know what I mean? Like, it might have been a launch title. Who knows? And I feel like it's got to be really tough for game developers that, in order to make a dent in the bottom line, they have to release it everywhere. But in order to do that, the game, the quality and the creativity of the game has to suffer for it. So this is exciting for me. Again, like you said, easy for me to say because I'm the one that has a PS5. But I think after a certain time, games just stop being made for old hardware anyway. So I don't think this means that any game that's announced to be cross-gen automatically is going to be canceled for the last gen version. But I do think that this is going to start being more the norm than a one-off situation like this.
Yeah, I don't disagree. There's definitely going to be games that still will launch cross-platform, but you got to think like WB is not some small-time developer. It's not like they're releasing a game. It's not like they're releasing whatever they're releasing, and it's like, oh, here's this little indie game, and like we're known for like, it would be like if Devolver were to be like, hey, this game that was going to launch on both, we just can't make that happen. It's not reality. And we're going to have to move this over. That, like, wouldn't have the same impact. WB is a massive publisher. They release a lot of games and they have a lot of really big properties. And so for them to take a step like this, I really think that this is essentially they're the ones that are being like, okay, well, no one else is going to do it. Then we're going to fucking do it.
Right.
We'll be the one that has to take the first step. We'll be the ones that are going to be the bad guys so that everyone else around us who are making these decisions can be like, okay, we're going to have to do the same.
Yeah.
And I think when we finally see this being like you will know when this is going to like finally hit like the last little bump is going to be when a studio like when Microsoft or PlayStation announces, "Hey, we're done releasing cross-gen." Once I think both of them do that, or like one of them does that, then it's game over for everybody else.
Yeah.
And that sucks for those that can't. And the other part too, like you said, is that it's a life cycle.
Yeah.
Things have to die eventually, and unfortunately, the Xbone and the PlayStation 4 have to die.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're what, 2 years in now? Almost 2
Mhm.
full years into this new gen
Yeah.
console, and we're still calling it next gen
Right.
because most things launch in native form on previous consoles, and it's all because of supply chain issues and just the fact that COVID sucks.
Yeah.
So,
And like I
you know,
expected the cross gen to go further than most cycles because PlayStation 4 is the second best selling console of all time. It sold
sure.
119 million, or the third best selling, second or third, 119 million units all time. Compare that to the Switch, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, which is like 105 now or something like that. But that's still that's their main console still. So like different story for Switch. But
Sure.
yeah, interesting stuff came in. But one company would argue that the future is in streaming.
That is true. Now this comes from Jeffy Grub Grub. Gold Jeffy Grub Grub
Oh, Jeffy Grub Grub.
from Venture Beat.
Games
This
Beat.
whole Games Beat. I think it was from Venture Beat. What is Jeffy Grub Grub doing
Let's look it up.
today? Let's go look it up. Look up and see what Jeffy Grub. So this comes from Jeffy Grub Grub. He talks about Xbox planning on launching a streaming stick and Samsung TV app in the next 12 months. And, good for them. That's what he says. He says, Microsoft is done waiting for you to come to Xbox. Instead, the company is gearing up to bring Xbox to wherever you are. This is part of the company's Xbox Everywhere initiative, which was expanded yesterday by adding Fortnite to Xbox Cloud Gaming. While you can already stream games from the cloud to your phone and PC, Microsoft also has plans to expand access through your family room television, according to people familiar with the plans. In the next 12 months, Microsoft plans to release an Xbox cloud gaming streaming device. This will look like an Amazon Fire Stick or perhaps a small Roku-like puck. And like a Roku, the Xbox streaming device will enable you to access movie and TV services in addition to a library of games through Xbox Game Pass. If you already have a Samsung Smart TV, though, you can maybe skip a separate device entirely. Microsoft is working closely with its partners at Samsung to develop an Xbox gaming streaming app for that company's televisions. That too, it should debut within the next 12 months. This move from Microsoft is hardly surprising. The company has noted repeatedly that it doesn't really care how you get into the Xbox ecosystem, but while it has said that, it has also simultaneously poured huge resources into its dedicated Xbox consoles. This has been something of a concession that gaming hardware is still the best way to reach potential Game Pass subscribers. But with games like Fortnite and Halo Infinite, Microsoft could appeal to an audience that is ready to try free games but not willing to make an investment in expensive consoles. Patrick,
That's me.
this is wild.
Yeah, I
News.
mean it's there's been rumors for a while. Also to fall on the sword. It is VentureBeat. GamesBeat, I guess, is what they call like the games side of their website. So you were right. It's VentureBeat, not GamesBeat. I just wanted to correct my error.
Yeah.
This is exciting though. Like I think it's exciting in a way. Like
Mhm.
what I don't want to eventually happen is that like game streaming is like the only way to do it, but I don't think that'll ever be the case. But this is I really do love that Xbox's whole thing is like we just want everyone to play games. And they want to do what they can with things like Game Pass to get as many people playing games as possible. Now, we've talked on the show a lot about how, that approach sometimes can lead to there being a less than enthusiastic library of games that you release from an exclusive perspective. But like, I think it'd be really cool if like I'm on vacation at an Airbnb and I don't need to bring my Xbox. I can just, if they have a Samsung, or if I bring my Xbox Roku stick, whatever they're going to call it, I can just plug that in and stream some games on the TV that way. What I'm really curious about is like, what's it going to cost? Does it like come with a controller? Like, does it come with Game Pass? Like, there's a lot of kind of looming questions, I think, but it's a really cool initiative, and I'm excited that we're finally getting actual coverage on it and that aren't just rumors that like enough people are talking about it behind the scenes with the press that like people are actually reporting on like, hey, this is coming, like it's happening now.
Yeah, no, I 100% understand where you're coming from. I think the truth is this is the next logical step.
Yeah,
Um, like I mean, every day that passes, we're getting closer and closer into a reality in which everyone has access to internet. Now, I will say that majority of the United States does not have good internet.
yeah,
Dog shit internet. And so if you're in a place in which your internet sucks. Like I had a house that I was renting out a few years back, and the internet there, I was paying for like the fastest streaming internet, and I'd be watching Netflix, and half the time it'd be pixelated.
yeah,
And do I think that you could play something like Starfield on that? I don't think so. So I do think that at least for now, um, this is only going to really benefit a very small subsect of people who have access to internet that will provide like premium ability to do cloud streaming.
for sure.
Every year that passes, obviously, I think this is going to get better and better and better. But I do think this is a logical step for the future, and it also kind of leads credence to this whole idea that have kind of thunk up that eventually, and I know they're putting a lot of money and whatnot into their consoles, but with them buying out all these studios and doing all this stuff, it almost seems like at the end of the day, it's better for them to kind of run their operation more like a movie production studio,
Sure.
or running it something like Netflix, where we might get to a point where really the only people making consoles could potentially be Sony or Nintendo. Um, and you might have it where Xbox is like, you know what, our consoles suck because let's be honest, outside of the 360's raging success, their consoles haven't really taken off well. And they're trying to do a big initiative and a big push to try to get overseas, but really they're only successful in the States. And even that, like the last generation with the Xbone was miserable. And so I could see them getting to a point where they're like, hey, look, fuck it. We're not doing consoles anymore. We're moving into like, this is the future of now. And we could see, other things. I still think we're going to start seeing Xbox exclusives or studios that Xbox owns releasing games on PlayStation. I still think that will be a reality. But this also kind of makes me think like Sony is just still way behind on a
Sure.
lot of the things that Xbox is doing. I think Xbox has their foot in the right direction on like in their temp, their finger on the pulse. They kind of know what's going on and know what they want. Um, Ultimately, I don't think PlayStation. I think they're very much stuck in this world in which it's like consoles are the only thing we're gonna do. We're only gonna do this. We're getting out of handhelds. We're doing all these things, and they're just perpetually staying it's and very successfully so, but still perpetually staying in this world in which they just feel comfortable at. And I
Yeah,
think ultimately that will be PlayStation's downfall when that happens.
I will say Xbox has sold, I think, a little bit better than I think a lot of people give them credit for. The Xbox 360, the number 8 best-selling console of all time. Xbox One is only a few slots behind that at 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, with 51 million estimated sold. So it's in front of like SNES, N64, Sega Genesis. Like it's in front of some big consoles. But when you compare it to PlayStation 4, that sold like 2.5 times that. Like it's when you compare it to PlayStation 4, their console cycle was
I mean,
shitty. So
PlayStation
like,
2 sold ludicrous numbers as
well,
well.
that I mean, yeah, that's the best selling console of all time, 155
So
million.
and honestly, I don't know the exact numbers. I know that Xbox has been selling better this year or better this generation than obviously last. Last generation was awful. But I mean, PlayStation, I don't know, or I don't think from what I read the numbers is that they have come close to what PlayStation 5s have sold. And the supply chain has been dog shit.
Yeah, yeah. I
So,
don't know. I haven't
you
seen
know,
Xbox numbers for the most recent. I
they're
think,
very cagey about their
yeah,
numbers when it comes to their console sales too.
yeah. I think I just saw this week that PS5 is up to like 19 million, maybe. I forget uh yeah, PlayStation 5. On Wikipedia, they're 17.3, but I think they did an update. So that right now it's 2 slots behind the OG Xbox. Um, with here we go. Xbox Series X and S at 12 million is an estimate. So it's not actually been reported. But yeah, I mean, I don't disagree that like I think long term it could be that like Xbox is like fuck the norm. We're gonna pave our own way by being a publisher on all of the platforms. Because like if I could get Game Pass on PlayStation, that'd be dope.
Yeah,
So we'll
I
see.
agree.
We'll see. Speaking of sales, though, Cayman, we're gonna end today's show with a quick little update from Nintendo on things like the Switch, its sales numbers, and some of its titles, some of its highest selling titles. So this is just coming straight from Nintendo. This is from an earnings report. They've updated and are letting us know that they have now sold 107.65 million units all time. But one of the most interesting pieces that you brought up before we started recording was that they announced that Pokemon Arceus is now sitting just south of 13 million, or I guess just north of 12.5 million would be more accurate. 12.64 million to be exact
Yeah.
units, which comparing it to Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, the most recent release with 2 copies at 14.65 million. So only 2 million short in a much shorter amount of time. Kind of what you had said was a lot of people have been like, with Pokemon, well, people are buying 2 of them, but
Yeah, no, yeah. So, and that's been the big argument, right? Is that people they tend to kind of fall back on this idea where it's like, oh, well, the only reason Pokemon sells so well is because they're making people buy 2 copies. And then Legends Arceus comes out and drops almost 13 million copies.
yeah,
And that number isn't even close to accurate anymore, since we're middle of May now, and that number would have ended March 31st. People like Pokemon, and there's a reason why Pokemon sells so well.
yeah,
And I'm really, really, really hoping that the reason, like with these sales numbers, that Nintendo is like, okay, cool, maybe we should do more stuff like this, because that was a huge gamble to shake up the formula in the way they did. This
yeah,
isn't like, hey, let's go put Pikachu and let's go Eevee, which is sure it's a shakeup, but it's essentially just a remake of Pokemon Yellow.
yeah.
They're giving you a game that we haven't seen a Pokemon game of this nature ever. And for it to sell as well as it has, I don't think it's shocking. I think people want updated, more modern version of Pokemon. I think people want that. I want that.
I mean,
And
it brought in people like me. Like I'm
yeah,
next Pokemon game, Velvet or whatever this coming, Velvet and Violet. What is it? Scarlet and Violet. I'm
Scarlet
buying
and
it.
Violet.
I'm down.
Oh yeah.
Arceus won me over. It
Yeah.
brought me to Charmander's side. You know what I mean?
I'm hoping that the new game doesn't revert back to its original premise.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is because they didn't know, like, this game obviously has been in production for a long enough period of time where they wouldn't have known how successful Legends Arceus was going to be. So it is a little bit of a worry that this game might be a step back and we might get like a more traditional Pokemon game, something like Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl. There's a good chance that it'll probably be closer to that than Legends Arceus. But I am hoping, because of these numbers, that everything else produced after this is going to be something that's more of an evolution,
Yeah.
to coin a Pokemon term, an
Look at you.
evolution of the series. That's my hope, at least. And
Yeah.
whether that happens or not, time will tell. We won't know until November. But come November, you can guarantee that both of us will be playing it.
Oh yeah. The crazy thing to me is that when you look at their top, so they released of like their highest selling games essentially. So Mario Kart with 45 million, Animal Crossing with 39 million, Super Smash with 28 million. Like these numbers are insane. Because you compare it to games like God of War, which is like a banner title for PlayStation 4. Their best-selling game on PlayStation 4 only sold 20 million. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games that have outsold that so far on Switch. And like, granted, Switch is still going, but like these numbers are just insane. There's this weird thing, this weird trend where, like, when you look at all of these game franchises, their best-selling game is on Switch. Like, Switch is just like the anomaly where every game that comes out, and like when you look at this list, once Arceus officially enters the top 10, half of the list will be Pokemon games.
Okay, well, I want you. Can you repeat one more time to me what the sales number was for uh, Mario Kart again?
45.3 million.
Okay, let's put that into perspective. So Mario Kart has sold 45.88
Three.
million,
Three.
3 million. Okay, as of February, February 7th of 2022, Grand Theft Auto 5 has sold 160
Well,
million
sure.
copies.
That game has also been released on like 19 consoles.
True, but I also think it's still prescient to
It's
acknowledge
sure.
the fact that like 160 million copies
Oh, for
is,
sure.
I mean, I don't know. Minecraft, I think still range champion of like how many copies of it. But I mean, that's also on, iPhone.
Right,
So
right,
like
right.
I feel like that's a little but like come the fuck on, guys. Like
Yeah,
some of these sales numbers for some of these games are just absolutely fucking ludicrous to me.
yeah.
It makes me sick.
Makes
It
me
makes
sick.
me sick.
Well, let's get you some Tylenol, Cayman. Let's put you to
Please
bed.
put me to bed.
Let's put you to bed
Sing me a song, maybe.
because that's our show.
It makes me sick.
Thank you, Cayman, for coming along on this ride. Thank you to our audience.
Always.
If you're listening, if you're watching, wherever you are, if you're just vibing, if you're just feeling the show, thank you for being here. You can follow Cayman at Kid Cayman. You can follow me at Patrick Schwag. You can follow the pod at Twitter. Nope, on Twitter at Spot Games Pod. You can follow us on Instagram at Spotlight Games Podcast. You can now follow us on TikTok. We actually posted a TikTok. Gotta go
Fuck
post some
yeah.
more TikToks at Spotlight Games Pod on TikTok. I gotta do some fusing of. They're all different on everything, but it's like Spotlight Games is just such a fucking long name. I don't know who named this goddamn channel, but
Yeah. I think I was an asshole.
I'm a fucking asshole. So yeah, go do that. Rate us, review us, tell your friends about us. If you want to be on the show, mail at spotlightgames.net with your thoughts, questions, concerns, everything else related to video games. As I said last week, tax returns, don't send them.
Never send them.
Don't send them. But hey, until next week, I've been Patrick. That's been Cayman. We're going to go off into the sunset and kiss each other.
It makes me sick.